You manipulated him. You whispered poison in his ear, twisted his mind until he signed everything over to you.
We'll sue. We'll drag your name through the mud. We'll tell the world what a greedy little vulture you are.
Go ahead. Try. Try.
You manipulated him! My mother, Sharon, hissed, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the conference room. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the mahogany table. A confused, dying man. You whispered poison in his ear, twisted his mind until he signed everything over to you. My uncle, Richard, leaned forward, his expensive suit crinkling. He smirked, a cruel, confident expression. We'll sue. We'll drag your name through the mud. We'll tell the world what a greedy little vulture you are. I held their furious gaze, letting their hatred wash over me. The air was thick with it, a suffocating perfume of greed. I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch. Then I leaned forward, my voice just a whisper, but colder and harder than the steel this city was built on. Go ahead. Try. But to understand how we arrived at that moment, in that cold, polished room, you have to go back. 8 years earlier. The memory is so vivid, it feels like yesterday. The antiseptic smell of Mercy Hospital, a scent of quiet despair that clings to everything. My grandfather, Arthur, was a ghost under the thin, white sheets, his powerful frame lost in a tangle of tubes and wires. The doctor's voice was flat, devoid of hope. It's a complex cardiac procedure. The cost will be upwards of $250,000. Honestly, his chances of surviving the surgery are less than 15%. My mother didn't even shed a tear. She just looked at my uncle, a cold, pragmatic understanding passing between them. Richard, ever the businessman, glanced at his own father and said, "Investing in a depreciating asset is a bad business decision, Sharon." They turned and left, just like that. They left him to die, but they didn't just leave him. They left me. And if you've ever been the only one left standing when everyone else has walked away, do me a favor and hit that like button. You and I have something in common. The silence they left behind was louder than any argument. It was a hollow, echoing void, punctuated only by the soft, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor next to his bed. That beep became the new soundtrack to my life. I stood there for a long time, just watching the steady green line on the screen. I was 20 years old, a part-time waitress with a half-finished community college degree, and I felt a hurricane of emotions inside me. There was a white-hot rage at their callousness, a bone-deep, paralyzing fear of what was to come, but underneath all of it, a quiet, stubborn resolve was hardening like steel. They could walk away, but I wouldn't. He wasn't a line item on a balance sheet. He was my grandfather. He was my home. The next 48 hours moved in a blur. I drove my beat-up, 10-year-old Ford Escort, the only thing of value I owned, to a dealership, and sold it for a few $1,000s in cash. I walked into the administration office of my college and officially withdrew, watching my dream of a simple, normal future evaporate right before my eyes. Then, I marched back to Mercy Hospital, not to his room, but to the billing department on the first floor. A kind-faced woman pushed a stack of papers towards me, her eyes full of pity. "Are you absolutely sure you understand, honey? You'll be legally responsible for the full amount." I picked up the heavy black pen. My hand was trembling, but my signature on that first page was clear and steady. Each document I signed felt like a shackle, locking me into a future of debt, but it also felt like a promise. That same day, I got a job as a janitor on the night shift right there in the hospital. I needed to be close. I want you to be honest with me for a second. If you were standing in my shoes, with that mountain of debt and that pen in your hand, what would you do? In the comments, just type a 1 for walking away or a 2 for signing the papers. There's no wrong answer. I just want to know. I had made my choice. There was no going back. My new life found a grueling, relentless rhythm. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I was a ghost in blue scrubs, pushing a mop through the quiet, sterile corridors of Mercy Hospital. The scent of bleach and antiseptic became my constant companion. I scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans, my body aching but my mind always one floor up in the ICU. As soon as my shift ended, I'd take the elevator up, pull a chair to his bedside, and hold his cool, unresponsive hand. I talked to him for hours, reading from old books, describing the sunrise over the Monongahela River, anything to fill the suffocating silence. 2 weeks bled into 3, then 4. The doctors offered no good news. Their faces were a mixture of professional sympathy and grim reality. The money from my car vanished into the black hole of his medical bills. Despair began to set in, a cold, heavy fog in my heart. In the darkest hours of the night, a voice would whisper in my head, "You threw your life away for a memory. He's not coming back." I was on the verge of believing it. Then, one gray afternoon, as I was wiping his forehead with a damp cloth, I saw it. A flicker. His eyelids fluttered, as delicate as moth wings. I stopped breathing, my heart pounding in my chest. I leaned closer, my hand hovering over his. His eyes, cloudy and distant, slowly opened. They roamed the room before finding Mimi. His lips parted, and a dry, rasping sound emerged, a voice I thought I'd never hear again. He said one word, barely a whisper, but it hit me like a thunderclap. Keystone. Tears instantly blurred my vision. It wasn't a random word. It was our code, Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. He'd always told me stories of the steelworkers, the miners, the tough, resilient people who were the central stone that held the whole country's arch together. "We're Keystone people, Maya," he used to say. "We don't crumble." It was his way of saying, I'm still here, I'm still fighting. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. His recovery was not a miracle. It was a testament to sheer grit. It was slow, frustrating, and painful. But it was happening. First came more words, then short sentences. Weeks later, with my help, he took his first shaky steps across the hospital room. After 4 grueling months, the day finally came when we walked out of Mercy Hospital for good. We couldn't afford much, so we rented a small ground-floor unit in a rundown duplex in a neighborhood that smelled perpetually of damp earth and old industry. The paint was peeling, the floors creaked, but it was our sanctuary. And most importantly, it had a garage. That garage was his cathedral. It was a dusty, cluttered shrine to his life before retirement, his years as a lead engineer for one of Pittsburgh's biggest steel companies. It was filled with heavy-duty tool chests, welding torches, and stacks of old schematics. His body was frail, but his mind, that brilliant engineer's mind, was untouched. One evening, he watched me get frustrated with our sputtering coffee maker. He shuffled over, his walker scraping against the concrete floor, and pointed a shaky finger. "It's not the heating element," he said, his voice stronger now. "It's a faulty thermal switch. Hand me that multimeter." That was the beginning of my real education. Every evening after my shift, we were in that garage. He taught me how to solder, how to read wiring diagrams, how to rebuild an electric motor. He'd bring home discarded appliances he found on the curb. People throw away perfectly good things because they don't understand them, he told me, his eyes sharp and focused. They see something broken, and they quit. But if you take the time to learn how it works, you can rebuild anything. Machines, lives, it's all the same. I was no longer just a janitor. I was his apprentice. I was being remade. It makes me think. We all have an Arthur in our lives. In the comments below, I'd love for you to tell me about one person who taught you a lesson that you still carry with you today. As my skills grew, so did my ambition. It started with a simple, terrifying thought that kept me awake at night. What if he fell while I was at my shift? We looked into the medical alert systems on the market, but they were absurdly expensive, far beyond our reach. A flicker of an idea sparked between us in that dusty garage. What if we could build a better one? A simpler, more affordable fall detection sensor that ordinary people like us could actually own. The idea consumed us. We spent every spare moment sketching designs on napkins, soldering prototypes on our kitchen table, and testing algorithms until dawn. For the first time, I wasn't just fixing what was broken. I was building something new. I was building a future. After months of work, our prototype was ready. I poured all my courage into applying for a local innovation grant, a small fund designed to help Pittsburgh-based startups. To my shock, I was shortlisted and invited to present to a panel of local investors. This was it, a chance to turn our garage project into a real company. I was terrified, but Arthur's belief in me was a rock. He coached me every night, helping me refine my pitch. But good news travels, and so does gossip. My Uncle Richard, who hadn't bothered to call his father once in all these months, heard about my upcoming presentation through a family acquaintance. He didn't confront me. His methods were always more subtle, more venomous. I wouldn't find out the truth until much later, but the day before my pitch, he placed a call to the head of the investment fund. He didn't slander me directly. No, he played the part of a concerned uncle, worrying about his emotionally fragile niece. He hinted that I was being pressured into a far-fetched project by a sick old man, questioning my stability and the viability of the whole enterprise. He planted a seed of doubt, expertly and maliciously, and when I walked into that room the next day, I felt it instantly. A sudden chill, a wall of skepticism I couldn't understand, a door quietly closing in my face. I walked out of that conference room into the sterile hallway, the polite no still ringing in my ears. Defeat was a bitter, metallic taste in my mouth. I had failed. All the late nights, all the sacrifices, all of Arthur's patifes me. It all felt like it had amounted to nothing. I sank onto a bench, the small prototype in my hands, suddenly feeling foolish and heavy. I was packing it away, my vision blurred with tears I refused to shed, when a voice cut through my despair. That was a remarkable presentation. I looked up. It was one of the panelists, an older man with a kind, weathered face and a tweed jacket. He hadn't asked any of the dismissive questions. "I'm Dr. Evans," he said, extending a hand. "I teach robotics at Carnegie Mellon. The rest of the panel, they're venture capitalists. They look for billion-dollar exits. I look for brilliant engineering and what you've built," he said, nodding toward my prototype. is brilliant engineering." I was so stunned, I couldn't even form a response. He continued, "Your approach to signal processing, using a Kalman filter to reduce false positives. It's incredibly elegant. It's the kind of practical, efficient design that actually saves lives, not just makes headlines." He pulled a card from his wallet. "The fund won't back you, but I'm on the board for a university research grant. It's for community-led innovation. It's not a huge amount, but it would give you lab access and enough capital to build your first production run." In that moment, this stranger, this professor, gave me back my future. His belief was the spark that reignited my own. That night, Arthur and I sat at our small kitchen table, filling out the grant application. When we got to the box for the company name, there was only one choice. I thought back to the hospital, to the first word that broke the silence. We called it Keystone Dynamics. We weren't just a girl and her grandfather in a garage anymore. Thanks to one person who chose to see the work instead of the gossip, we were officially in business. The next 5 years were a blur of hard work and quiet joy. With the university grant, we moved Keystone Dynamics out of our garage and into a small, rented workshop. We weren't a big corporation, but we were a success. We built a reputation for making reliable, affordable products that helped people. We got contracts with nursing homes across Pennsylvania, then Ohio. But the real success was the time I got. I got 5 more years of his stories, his laughter, his guidance. 5 years of watching him, the proud engineer, hold the finished product we had built together. He was no longer the ghost in the hospital bed. He was Arthur, my partner, my mentor, my anchor. He passed on a crisp autumn morning at the age of 89. It was peaceful. He was in his favorite armchair, a half-finished crossword puzzle in his lap, the sun streaming through the window. There were no beeping machines, no sterile smells, no panic. He hadn't just survived that day in the hospital. He had truly lived on his own terms. The funeral was small, attended by the people who genuinely knew and loved him, our neighbors, Professor Evans, the staff from the first nursing home that took a chance on us. It was a gathering of real affection, not obligation. I was standing by the entrance, shaking hands and accepting quiet condolences, when the sound of an expensive engine cut through the solemn atmosphere. A black BMW, polished to a mirror shine, pulled up. My mother and Uncle Richard emerged, dressed in designer black, looking less like mourners and more like executives arriving for a hostile takeover. Sharon swept towards me, forcing a sad smile. She ignored my red-rimmed eyes and put an arm around me in a gesture of fake solidarity. "Maya, darling," she said, her voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "I am so glad you were able to bring his little garage project to life. He would be so proud of what our family managed to build." The word family dripped with a poison I knew all too well. They had been absent for nearly a decade, but now they were here to claim a share of the victory. I don't know where you are watching this, maybe on your phone in bed or on your lunch break, but just take a moment to absorb the audacity, to show up after all that time and act like you were part of the team. I just stood there, silent, feeling the cold fury begin to build inside me. The battle wasn't over. The meeting was set for the following week at the office of his longtime lawyer. The conference room felt cold and impersonal, all polished wood and leather. My mother and uncle sat on one side of the table, fidgeting with their phones, radiating an air of impatient entitlement. I sat on the other, my hands resting calmly in my lap. I wasn't nervous. Arthur had made sure I would be prepared for this day. The lawyer, Mr. Chen, a kind man who had helped us file the original paperwork for Keystone Dynamics, cleared his throat. "We are here today to execute the last will and testament of Mr. Arthur Vance." He then looked directly at Sharon and Richard. "Before we proceed, Arthur instructed me to show you a message he recorded last month. He felt a written document was inadequate for the occasion." He turned a large monitor to face us and pressed a button. The screen lit up, and there was Arthur. He was thinner, paler, but he sat upright in his favorite armchair, and the familiar, intelligent fire in his eyes was bright as ever. His voice filled the room, steady and clear. "If you're watching this," he began, his gaze fixed on the camera, "it means my time is up. And if my children, Sharon and Richard, are sitting in that room, well, let's be honest, I knew you'd show up." My mother stiffened. "I want to make this simple. I want to talk about inheritance. To my 2 children, I want to state for the record that you already received your inheritance in full 8 years ago. Its value was exactly $250,000. That's the sum you saved when you chose to walk out of that hospital room. I hope it was worth it." My uncle's face went slack with shock. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Arthur's expression softened as his eyes seemed to find mine through the screen. Everything else, my home, my savings, my personal effects, and 100% of my controlling shares in Keystone Dynamics, I leave to my granddaughter, Maya. She inherited nothing but a mountain of debt and an old man's foolish hope, and with it, she built us a new world. You left me in silence. She gave me a voice. The screen went black. "He was manipulated!" Sharon finally shrieked. "He was senile." Mr. Chen slid a folder across the table. "On the contrary, this is a notarized affidavit from his doctor, confirming full cognitive function a week before this video was filmed. The will is ironclad." I thought leaving that law office would be the end of it. I was naive. For people like my mother and uncle, if they can't win legally, they will try to win by destruction. Their pride had been wounded, their entitlement denied. So they decided that if they couldn't have Keystone Dynamics, then no one could. They decided to burn it all to the ground, and me along with it. My Uncle Richard, with his venomous charm and sales connections, orchestrated the attack. He knew that in the modern world, the court of public opinion can be more brutal than any legal court. He carefully crafted a story and fed it to a hungry sensationalist tech blogger known for prioritizing clicks over facts. The story was a masterpiece of deception. It painted a picture of a brilliant but frail old inventor slipping into dementia, being preyed upon by his estranged granddaughter. In this twisted narrative, I was the manipulative one. I was the one who isolated him, who took advantage of his confusion to steal his intellectual property and his fortune, leaving his loving, concerned children out in the cold. The article was published on a Monday morning. I woke up to a nightmare. The headline was a gut punch. Keystone cunning. Did a granddaughter steal her ailing grandfather's empire? It was everywhere. My phone started buzzing incessantly. Emails flooded my inbox. Our partners, the nursing homes who trusted us, were calling with concerned questions. Journalists were leaving voicemails. Everything Arthur and I had painstakingly built over 8 years, a reputation based on honesty, hard work, and care, was being systematically torn apart by a web of calculated lies. If you've ever had someone twist the truth and try to paint you as the bad guy, I know you can feel the injustice in this. If this makes your blood boil even a little bit, just tap the like button so I know you're with me on this. I wasn't just defending a company anymore. I was defending his honor. For 24 hours, I let the storm rage. I watched the hateful comments pile up online. I listened to the worry in the voices of our suppliers. I felt the weight of their lies trying to crush me. For a moment, I almost buckled. And then, I heard Arthur's voice in my head, as clear and steady as it was in our garage. They see something broken and they quit. You don't. He hadn't just prepared me to run a company. He had prepared me for this very battle. He didn't just leave me his tools. He left me a complete blueprint for the truth. The next morning, I sent out an email to every journalist who had contacted me, including the blogger who wrote the original piece. I invited them to a press conference at the Keystone Dynamics workshop. It was a gamble, a huge one, but it was the only move I had left. They all showed up, smelling blood in the water. The blogger sat in the front row, a smug look on his face, his laptop open, ready to type out my downfall. I stood before them, not behind a fancy podium, but next to the workbench where Arthur and I had built our first prototype. "Good morning," I said, my voice amplified by a small microphone. "I'm sure you're all expecting a tearful denial. You won't be getting one. I'm not here today to share my feelings. I'm here to share evidence." I started by projecting dated and signed pages from Arthur's personal engineering logs, hundreds of them detailing every stage of our invention process. It was an undeniable, chronological record of his lucid, brilliant mind at work, side by side with me. "And now," I said, my voice dropping, "I'd like to address the claim that my family was motivated by loving concern for my grandfather's well-being." I clicked a file on my laptop. This is a recording of a phone call Arthur made to my mother 8 years ago, 2 days after they left him. The room filled with the sound of her voice, sharp and impatient. "We can't just throw away that kind of money, Dad. It's a bad investment. We can't." A collective gasp went through the room. The blogger's smug face collapsed. He slowly closed his laptop. It was over. Their lies were no match for one simple, unvarnished truth. The aftermath was swift. The blogger's article was deleted, replaced by a humiliating retraction and apology. The local news ran stories about the press conference, and for the first time, the full, true story was told. My mother and uncle retreated into a wall of silence, their public shaming complete. I had won. The truth had won. But standing alone in the workshop that night, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. The victory was hollow because the fight should never have happened. I realized then that Arthur's legacy couldn't just be about proving the liars wrong. It had to be about building something right. A few months later, I was driving through an old part of town and saw a "for sale" and a sign on a chain-link fence. Behind it stood the rusted skeletal remains of the old JL steel mill, its windows like vacant eyes. It was the very plant where Arthur had spent 40 years of his life. An idea took hold of me, an idea so big and so crazy it felt exactly like something he would have encouraged. I took the inheritance, the money my family had fought so viciously for, and I bought that forgotten ruin. It took 2 years of my life and every ounce of my energy. We cleared out the rust, polished the old concrete floors, and preserved the great steel bones of the building. We filled the cavernous space with modern computer labs, 3D printers, and welding stations. We named it Arthur's Forge. It's not just a building, it's a promise. It's a nonprofit foundation dedicated to teaching the next generation the skills they need to thrive. We provide free training in coding, robotics, and advanced manufacturing to young people in communities left behind by the modern economy. We transformed a monument of industrial decay into a beacon of hope, proving Arthur's favorite lesson on the grandest scale imaginable. Even the most broken things can be rebuilt, stronger than before. So this is where I spend most of my evenings now, walking through the bustling halls of Arthur's Forge. The air here doesn't smell like decay anymore. It smells like potential, a mix of hot metal, ozone, and possibility. I see his legacy not in a bank account, but in the focused expression of a young woman learning to write her first line of code, or the proud smile of a boy who just fixed his first engine. I still have his favorite wrench, its wooden handle worn smooth and dark from a lifetime of use. Holding it, I finally understand the difference between the two things that defined this entire chapter of my life: inheritance and legacy. My family fought with everything they had for an inheritance. An inheritance is something you are given. It's passive. It's a number on a page, a deed to a house. It can be spent, lost, or fought over until it turns to ash. But Arthur taught me to build a legacy. A legacy isn't given, it's earned every single day. It's the skill in your hands, the integrity in your heart, and the impact you have on the people around you. No one can ever take that away from you. They fought for the money. I fought for the meaning. Ultimately, life offers every one of us that same fundamental choice, over and over again. When we are faced with something broken in our lives, in our communities, do we treat it like a bad investment and walk away? Or do we see the value that still exists, pick up the tools, and begin the difficult, beautiful work of rebuilding? That single choice defines who you are more than anything else. And if you believe that our greatest value comes from what we build, not what we're given, then I know you've found the right community. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we're not just telling stories here. We're a home for builders, and our journey together is just getting started. Thank you for being a part of mine.